process of Luzingu. So this world, the physical world, has three basic elements whose leadership is to balance between them. The world is widely known in Congo traditional symbolism as Makuku Matatu, 3 firestones. That's why in the African worldview, we use 3 firestones for cooking, right? If you visit our communities in Africa, in Southern Africa, you see that in most of the villages, we use 3 bricks, like 3 stones for cooking. And even our pots are designed in the same manner. You look at the pots, our wooden pots, our clay pots, right? Our metal pots. Here in Southern Africa, when you go to attend a wedding, you see the pots, they are designed in a similar manner with 3 legs. And our firestones also, we usually use 3 firestones. This is not a coincidence. This is part of our spirituality and it's part of our cosmology because those 3 firestones symbolize our world. Okay, in Congo, traditional symbolism, we call that Makuku Matatu. Makuku Matatu, the 3 firestones which the social Congo structural mortar, Kinzu, the social cultural organization of Congo society is shaped and is symbolized by 3 basic forces. So those 3 firestones, number 1, all growing social forces among Zingunza. Okay, so number 1 is all growing social forces among spiritual people. Zingunza, spiritual people, heroic future community members in their color step. So that's a color step. The second one, all positive capacities of present leaders and the leadership. So number 2, the second stone is all positive capacities of present leaders. So Ntwadisi Simbi, Yanki Twadisi Kiau. The third one, the third firestone symbolizes the experience of specialists and their specialities, Nkuma, Zamba, Banganga, Yekinganga Kiau. So those are their specific skills, experiences, these make up their competencies and their specialities. So 1, we are looking at growing social forces that as a man, you must grow, become a man, you are growing. And the second one symbolizes positive capacities of present leaders. So as a leader, you have positive capacities that impact your community. And the third one is that of the experience of specialists. So all the healers you have in your community and their specific specializations. Those are the 3 firestones. So it's not a coincidence that in African homes, we have 3 firestones that are used for cooking and that are used in our cuisines and our kitchens. All right, so as a specialist, as I said, is something that is required of all its members, right? It's an expression of professional requirement in social organization. So in Congo society, in African society, everyone is a free individual and a doer. Okay, you must be a doer, you must be a specialist, you must be a free individual. Muna Congo, mfumu na mfumu, nganga na nganga. Muna Congo, mfumu na mfumu, nganga na nganga. Right? You are a mfumu, you are a free individual, but you must also be a healer at the same time. A Mukongo was accepted as such. Okay, as a nganga in his community, if he could be a doer of something for the well-being of the community, right? As I've already said, you cannot be a human, you cannot be a muntu here in our worldview if you do not have a speciality, if you do not have a specialization, a specific skill that is of use to your community. So in a sense, we are saying that the concept of human and the concept of muntu or boto, here in South Africa, we say Boto or Muntu. It's different. Human cannot mean Muntu. They are two different things. For the Westerner, a human is a generic term for everyone. A human, you are a human. But in our worldview, a Muntu is more than a human. A Muntu is more than a human. It's 100 times more than a human, because you have to be a Nganga. You have to be a Nganga. You have to be a leader. You have to be a rope that holds the community together. You have to be a leader, and you have to be someone who is incorruptible as a leader. So most of our leaders today in Africa do not qualify to be a Muntu in our African worldview. Do not qualify to be a Muntu. In our worldview, before the corruption, before the invasions, we qualified because we adhered to these principles, where a Muntu had to be a system within a system. Sun movement, the rising and setting of the sun, cycle of human life, birth, growth, death. Fireplace is called Zikwa with its 3 firestones. Divinatory calabash in upper world with its 3 differently colored ingredients, Dingu. So those are the symbolism. Okay, the symbolism of Nzaya Kuseke, upper world. The upper world is symbolized by the sun movement, is symbolized by the cycle of human life, which is birth, growth, death. As we saw in the cosmograph, you saw a man has to rise, birth, grow, stand erect in the zone, in the powerful zone, the V zone, and then he has to transition and become a good ancestor. So the fireplace, symbolized by its 3 firestones, divinatory calabash, this one is part and parcel of our worldview. There has to be a divinatory calabash. You know how a calabash looks like in Africa. So in the upper world, a calabash is not an accident. It's part and parcel of our cosmology. And these calabashes have to be colored in 3 different colors. Okay, it's called Dingu. In Southern Africa, in Zimbabwe, Zambia, Malawi, they call it Dengu. Dengu. So that's a divinatory calabash. According to the author, Pachikama, also Emukongo, Makuku, Matatu, the 3 Congo mother provinces, okay, only date from the 13th century to the present time, is to be linked to the Bantu Congo worldview.
This contribution, this focus on ancestry can help us so much. Part of the reason why so many people are depressed, you know, part of the reason why so many people are overwhelmed, part of the reason why so many people struggle with anxiety is because, well, they feel alone, right? And this society that we live in, you know, cultivates this idea of individualism, of, well, you could be strong. Oh, you could figure it out on your own. And you should, in fact, figure it out on your own. You can do it all by yourself, these concepts of self-reliance, which has its place. But what happens is that what ends up happening is people end up feeling like they're all alone, that everything is up to them. And that is not true at all, right? And so the benefit of our ancestral worldview is it allows us to tap into the notion of, no, we are part of a team. It's not, I don't have to figure it all out because I'm part of a team, I'm part of a collective. I'm not the wave, I'm part of the wave, I'm not the ocean, I'm part of the ocean. And so we're able to tap into a wider body of spiritual support. And just knowing that we're not alone, that we do have this team around us.
One of us is the creator having a human experience. And we are fulfilling the destiny of the creator when we live the lives that we live. I was following along with the work that Dr. Mitoli was showing us, the work of Dr. Fukia in his book on Congolese cosmology. And I think of the work of these genius scholars that came forward before us to develop an understanding of who we are as a people. As I said earlier, I'm an educator. I retired from the New York City Board of Education, 2009, having spent 31 years with our children in South Central Bronx. I've been a college professor for 14 years. 12 of those years, I was in a state university in the Black Studies Department at New Paltz. And what I've found out over time as it relates to studying, coming up out of the Roman Catholicism and beginning to look at our ancestors, I began by saying when someone tells a perfect lie, the truth is unbelievable. For us to return back to understand the deepest fundamental meaning of spirituality, I return back to a people that I think Dr. Mitoli could speak on far better than I, the Twa Mbuti, the Khoisan people. These are the first family that came out of the Homo sapiens sapiens that began to develop a civilization. They are the first family. And the Twa Mbuti Khoisan, Central and Southern Africa combined, because remember, these countries that we're dealing with, as we call them through Africa, the so-called 55 countries, we have to go back to 1885 and understand the Berlin Conference and what the Berlin Conference did to carving up Africa and doling out pieces of Africa, huge land masses that would become the countries that we know of today. And so when we look at Africa as a continent, there are connections that were there where African peoples had been connected. You can go to Kenya and you can go to Ethiopia and you can see the Omo people. When Kenya was separated from what we today call Ethiopia, the landmass of Ethiopia, the geography, the country, we know that the Omo people were split. There were Omo people in Ethiopia, north of Kenya, and there were Omo people that were south of Ethiopia. Yet when the country was split, the culture that came in and subjugated the African people changed. So now we look at the Omo people in Kenya, we look at the Omo people in Ethiopia, and we think that they're different people, but it's not. The same way you could go to Liberia and Sierra Leone, and you can look at the Vai people, VAI. When Liberia and Sierra Leone were separated from each other, you have on one side the Vai people, and on the other side you have the Vai people. You have one speaking one language, the other speaking another language, yet they're the same people. And so the great Senegalese scholar, Dr. Cheikh Anta Diop, teaches us in his book, his phenomenal book, Civilizational Barbarism. He tells us in his chapter on cultural identity that when someone wishes to oppress you, there are three things that they'll take from you. They'll take your history, they'll take your language, and they'll take your psychological factor. The great scholar Leonard Jeffries says that your psychological factor are your VIPs, your values, your interests, and your principles. And when someone takes your history, your language, your values, interests, and principles to oppress you, they then superimpose their history, their language, their values, interests, and principles on you. So that no matter what decision you come to in your life, being oppressed, it will never be in your favor because you're looking at the world through someone else's eyes. And I believe that the recapture and the restoration and the research that is to be done for us as an African people in the diaspora, but also at home. Because while we in the diaspora suffer from the psychological dimensions of, let's call it the enslavement process, because being with children, I don't teach children slaves were brought from Africa. We got to get rid of that word. Slave is a noun that describes who a people are. So in our children's minds, if a slave was taken from Africa, it would only make sense that they would be slaves in America. No. Human beings with great genius was stolen from Africa, and they were enslaved. They were kidnapped, held against their will in bondage, made to work against their own best interest for someone else's best interests. And so while the diaspora, we in the United States, the Caribbean, our brothers and sisters who speak Dutch in Holland, brothers and sisters in the UK speak English. In the Caribbean, Puerto Rico, República Dominicana, Cuba speaks Spanish. Brazil speaks Portuguese. We may have been enslaved, but there are many brothers and sisters on the continent of Africa who have been colonized. And so we're all in what the great musician Bob Marley says, we're all in a sleepless slumber. And we're all waking up out of this ma'afa, this terroristic disaster. And one of the things that we will have to do is to embrace our spirituality.